Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you about restoration and biodiversity protection. My name is Daria Kocinski, and I work at Thames Talbot Land Trust. In this presentation, I will be sharing some restoration projects that we have completed at TTLT nature reserves in the last few years. I just wanted to start with a few slides about Thames Talbot Land Trust and what we do. TTLT protects and restores nature within Elgin, Middlesex, Oxford, and Perth counties, and the City of London, in the current and traditional territories of Indigenous peoples, including Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabeg, Lenape, Arawandran, and Wendat peoples. With a focus on healthy habitats for wildlife, our work also contributes to human well-being and helps address climate change. The TTLT safeguards land through purchase, donation, or by special agreement, and cares for the land through conservation and restoration initiatives. Our vision is to create a network of protected areas where biodiversity can thrive and people can feel a sense of wonder and inspiration. The pillars of our work are to protect, restore, and nurture. We work to secure land to protect biodiversity forever, and we currently protect 20 nature reserves covering over 1,900 acres of land. We also work actively on the land to maintain and restore habitats with a focus on actions to support the more than 50 species at risk found on the nature reserves. TTLT also hosts events and programs aimed at nurturing people's connection to nature and to inspire wonder, promote well-being, and increase support for these protected areas. The map on this slide shows the location of TTLT nature reserves, several of which are open to the public with hiking trails and native plant gardens. The blue arrows indicate the nature reserves that have hiking trails on them. Today, I will be telling you about restoration projects at two nature reserves, Hawk Cliff Woods, which is found along Lake Erie, right here, and it's just near Port Stanley, if anyone's familiar with that area, and the Beebensee Tract in the Skunks, Missouri focal area where we work, which is in the southwest corner of Middlesex County. The Beebensee Tract is right here. So I'm going to start with Hawk Cliff Woods. This map shows Hawk Cliff Woods in 2015, 1 year before TTLT acquired the property. You can see that there are several areas of the property that were agricultural lands at that time. These lands actually cut into the forest block, reducing the amount of forest habitat available. Some area-sensitive birds require large tracts of woods and nest far from the edges of woodland. By filling in those gaps, TTLT hoped to create more of that interior woodland habitat on the property. For that reason, those gaps were restored to woodland, while part of the fields were restored to meadow to support migrating monarch butterflies. In 2016, TTLT planted the fields with seeds of meadow species, and for the forest areas, we also planted the seeds of trees and shrubs. The goal was to mimic natural succession by planting a meadow and then allowing the trees and shrubs to grow from seed and slowly transition to a thicket and then a forest over time. While the forest is establishing, the meadow habitat provides home to insects and birds that need open habitats. Later that summer, you can see that the field is lush with our companion plant, annual white millet. This is an agricultural species that is not winter hardy, so it provides cover for the young native plants, like that baby oak seen here underneath all of that plant matter. It also excludes undesirable weeds by taking up space, but then dies out over the winter. White millet is a food often included in bird seed mixes, so that field becomes a giant bird feeder in that first year. 1 year later, you can see that the millet is gone and the meadow is full of wildflowers in bloom. Over time, the meadow continues to develop and some of the slower growing species start to appear and flower. In 2021, even some of our rarer species we planted, like compass plant and pale purple coneflower that flowered for the first time in 2021, were found in the fields. So you can see that lots of people hug trees. I also hug compass plants and anything else I can get my arms around. This project has been a great success and supports a diversity of wildlife. Within a year, the meadow was already supporting more than 20 species of butterflies and 32 species of birds. TTLT continues to monitor the restoration area to watch the transition from meadow to forest as it progresses. I'm going to switch over now to talk about the Beebensee Tract. This project takes place in the Skunks Missouri Natural Area, which is a biodiversity hotspot in southwestern Ontario. This specific property at the Beavensie Tract is a 74-acre nature reserve that is mostly intact forest, as you can see on the map. But TTLT also acquired 2 acres of agricultural land as part of the overall nature reserve to fill in a gap in that forest. The goal was to restore those 2 acres to a thriving natural area. In the fall of 2019, Thames Talbot Land Trust partnered with a restoration ecology class at the University of Western Ontario to research and plan the most suitable restoration project for that site. Given historical records of savanna habitat at the site, the students proposed to restore this habitat to the landscape at the Beavensie Tract. Prairies and savannas were more widespread prior to European colonization, and this restoration project aimed to return a small patch of it to that landscape. So in 2019, in the fall, TTLT staff and volunteers and Western students worked together to source and plant native seeds at the site to create the savanna habitat. The species list for planting included nearly 40 native species typically found at local prairie and savanna sites. The seed mix used seeds that are locally adapted, as well as seeds of the same species, but from further south, that may be better adapted to the future expected climate. This mix will provide adaptive capacity for the restoration project in the face of accelerating climate change. Additional plantings and monitoring plots were established in 2020. Within 1 year, many of the plants had germinated, as you can see in this photo, and then also bloomed in this late summer and fall. But by the year 2 of the project, seen here, we could see excellent establishment of native plants with more than 25 species confirmed on site. TTLT will continue to monitor the project to assess the various species using the new habitat, the success of plants from different climate zones, and the viability of maintaining the habitat as a savanna rather than allowing it to transition to a forest. Natural cover in the Carolinian zone is about 15%, but many studies suggest that for habitat and human health, at least 30% cover is needed. Worldwide and Canadian targets are aiming to protect 25% of the terrestrial lands by 2025, yet we have less than 25% in a natural state to begin with in this area. Habitat restoration can bring back those lost habitats. It can also restore, support rare species that are declining, contribute to enhancing biodiversity, and provide ecosystem services that we depend on, like carbon storage, clean water, flood mitigation, and air filtration. And importantly, restoration is an opportunity to connect with land and nature directly by seeding or planting and watching all the life that is created through a project. The success of restoration projects depends on a number of things. You have to have good planning, willing and committed partners, and supportive communities that value all that nature provides. Thank you again for the opportunity to share some of TTLT's restoration work with you. If you're interested in learning more about us and our work, please feel free to reach out to me or look us up online.
Up next, we have Rishika Sharma and Elyse Peel, students with Western University in the Community Education Learning course, part of the biology program there. This is a course where they get to work with a community partner and deliver a project by the end of the semester that provides benefit both to the community and to the students doing it. They partnered with ALUS Middlesex and completed a research project, and tonight they're going to present their findings from that. I'll hand it over to them.
Thanks, Peter. So, like you said, my name is Elyse Peel, and my colleague Rishika Sharma and I are 2 undergraduate students completing our 4th year of an honors specialization in biology at Western University. Today, we're going to talk to you about the nature-based solutions for combating habitat loss. We'll be going over what nature-based solutions are and the importance of native plants, and then we'll provide a few ways that nature can be used to create and restore habitat to improve biodiversity. And we'll end with why wildlife is important and provide a few local examples of restoration within the Middlesex area. So first of all, nature-based solutions are ways that the environment can be used or mimicked to solve problems. They include actions that sustainably provide benefits to people and ecosystems, such as reducing flood risk, storing carbon, and improving water quality while having a positive impact on biodiversity. So next we'll talk about native plants. So when you're thinking of nature-based solutions and restoring habitat, it's important to consider the native plant species in your area. So native plants are those that occur naturally in a region and are generally found where they evolve. Native plants have formed symbiotic relationships with native wildlife over thousands of years and have evolved to live with the local climate, soil types, and animals. And so they are a good option for offering sustainable habitat for wildlife. They're also the ecological basis upon which life depends, and it's important to use native plants to maintain natural diversity in plant life, as well as to support species of insects, birds, and other mammals which are dependent on native plants to survive. For example, if you were to be creating a grassland habitat in Middlesex County, you could possibly include big and little blue stem grasses, Canada wild rye, yellow Indian grass, prairie cordgrass or switchgrass, and all of those are native grasses to this area.
So our question to you is, how are we supposed to take a land that looks like this and make it more productive? Well, our answer to this was to create more habitats. The natural restoration of habitats can bring back wildlife and cause it for higher productivity. So now the question is, how do we naturally restore habitats? Well, in order to naturally restore habitats, there can be the creation of wetlands. Now in history, wetlands were viewed as wastelands, and people generally thought that it was best to avoid them, and it was common to treat wetlands as wastelands or dumping grounds. So however, with more research and knowledge about the environment and ecosystems, the perspective around wastelands or wetlands has changed drastically. Wetlands provide many ecosystem services, which include providing habitats, behaving as a natural purifier, and blunting the catastrophic effects of floods and storms. A wetland is defined as a place where land is covered by water, so that water can either be saltwater, freshwater, or actually a mix of both or somewhere in between. Now, low-lying areas that frequently flood are wetlands, so that includes marshes, ponds, the edge of a lake, or oceans, and so on. So wetlands improve water quality as they behave as natural water purifiers. They filter the sediment and absorb many pollutants in the surface waters. In some wetland systems, this function of water cleansing also increases the quality of groundwater sources. And this increased quality of water is a necessary aspect of wildlife survival and thus will aid in natural habitat restoration. Wetlands also control floods and maintain stream flow. As wetlands along bodies of water absorb energy and store water during storms, this in turn decreases both downstream flood damage and the risk of a flash flood. The slow and steady release of stored water allows for streams to flow during times of drought, resulting in the survival of organisms in these streams. So wetland vegetation also behaves a bit like buffers, as it binds the soil on stream banks and riparian wetlands, preventing excessive erosion and sedimentation downstream, allowing for the stream to be in a balance of nutrients for wildlife inhabiting it. So that results in not too much or not too little sedimentation or nutrients in the stream water. Wetlands provide habitats for many species of animals, which include amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals that are adapted to these aquatic environments. Upland wildlife like deer, elk, and bear also use wetlands for food and shelter. Migratory birds especially use wetlands as breeding grounds. Wetlands also provide habitats for freshwater and marine life, which include organisms like trout, striped bass, pike, sunfish, shrimp, and more. The wetlands provide these animals with food, shelter, spawning, and nursery grounds. And wetlands are actually amongst some of the most productive ecosystems on Earth and provide ecosystem services that provide excellent habitats and thus behave as nature-based solutions for habitat restoration. So now the question is, how are wetlands created? So although it is true that wetlands are naturally occurring, they can also be constructed as well. Constructed wetlands are particularly designed marshes that filter, remove, or receive many different types of contaminants that can potentially be present in groundwater, runoff, or surface water. They're designed to imitate natural wetlands and specifically undertake the filter or purifier role. Constructed wetlands are categorized into two main groups: surface flow wetlands, and subsurface flow wetlands. So this first picture right here, the black and white picture, represents surface flow wetlands. And these imitate natural wetlands to a higher degree in comparison to subsurface flow wetlands, which is this infographic right here. They're composed of, so surface flow wetlands are composed of shallow basins underground that, or other supports that can actually manage the roots of plants. They're generally made of a soil-consisting base and an emergent vegetation. Surface water is exposed to the atmosphere and moves through the wetland, which is composed of a substrate of soils, gravels, and sediments at low speeds. The plants in the system are adapted to aquatic environments and are able to handle continuously saturated soils and anaerobic conditions that can be experienced below the water surface. Subsurface flow wetlands, so the second picture right here, the colored one, consists of a pond with a porous substrate made of rocks, sand, or gravel. These wetlands are primarily designed for vertical or horizontal flow, allowing for water to flow through a permeable root network below the soil surface. So this image right here actually depicts a horizontal flow. And so when my partner and I visited an ALUS site in Edgerton, we saw wetlands that were constructed and they purified the water downstream. And they purified water, which then flowed downstream where rocks were placed in order to control water flow. And these ponds actually resulted in return of wildlife back into the area, which includes plant life and amphibian species as well. So the next solution, or the next nature-based solution to creating habitats, are buffer strips. So before I explain what buffer strip is, I want to define the term riparian. So riparian actually refers to a place where streams meet land. And this important intersection controls many processes, especially those governing water quality. Recreation use of land near bodies of water can negatively impact the purity of water and the overall aquatic ecosystem, which is critical to general environmental health. A variety of organisms inhabit these streams, and it is found that buffer strips actually serve to protect these aquatic ecosystems and habitats. So buffer strips are strips of vegetation that are used as protective zone of permanent vegetation between a farm field and waterway that protects water quality and hence provides a better space for wildlife to flourish. Buffer strips basically slow and filter storm runoff while helping to hold soil in place. As a result, the amount of harmful phosphorus that reaches lakes may be reduced. They are planted alongside bodies of water such as agricultural drains, creeks, rivers, ponds, and wetlands to protect them from the neighboring impacts of neighboring land uses. Buffer strips remove sediments, nutrients, and other chemical contaminants from runoff before entering the water course, so that improves water quality. And buffer strips protect and extend stream health as well, so they prevent the filling of drainage ditches and streams with loose sediment, and the increased diversity of vegetation leads to habitat improvement by providing shade, travel corridors, nesting sites, and food sources for animals and insects. So essentially, buffer strips provide habitats for wildlife through greater plant diversity and by creating shade which cools down the water and makes a better environment for marine life like fish and spawn. The increase in vegetation cover can also help remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and improve the soil's water retention capacity. There are different types of buffers as well. There is a harvestable buffer strip, which are buffers that serve as forage harvest opportunity for farmers. There's also a contour buffer strip that is used in slope agriculture fields, and this actually prevents erosion and slows the velocity of rainwater as it travels downhill. And there are also shore gardens that are buffers between lake and a manicured residential lawn. So that in general is what a buffer strip is and how it could help with creating habitats. Now I want to get into buffer strip specificities. So there are actually 3 zones to buffer strips. So zone 1 is the one that is right beside the water source. Zone 2 is in the middle, and then zone 3 is most inland, and actually is beside the land. So each zone has a different width and has separate functions associated with it. Zone 1 usually is planted with large trees or shrubs, and trees and shrub roots actually promote bank stability. And even the leaves of the trees can slow down the flow of heavy rainfall onto the soil, which aids in preventing erosion of the soil. It also keeps the soil in place and out of streams. The leaf canopy of these trees can provide shade for much of the riparian area, and this shade allows for the water to be cooler in temperature, allowing for fish to survive. Falling leaves and branches provide organic matter for the stream and also provide resources for animals that live near the streams. A prime example of an organism that is benefited from these trees near streams are beavers. The large trees also provide a habitat for insects that the fish prey upon and also provide nesting spaces for birds as well. So now if you refer back to that barren land picture I showed you, if a buffer strip is created there beside some sort of body of water, whether that be a stream or a wetland, we will have more fish, animals whose survival depends on these trees and different organisms like birds, beavers, and insects that also flourish in areas like this. So with a buffer strip near a body of water, we've increased wildlife through creating more habitats. So now the second zone of the buffer strip is the middle. It tends to be a forest or mixed forest shrubland. And it is planted with small trees and native shrubs. The roots of these plants slow down water flow from human land use, and this provides water flow back to, or this improves water flow back to groundwater sources instead of into small bodies of water like streams. The plants also use many of the nutrients that are a result of agriculture runoff, preventing it from entering the stream. And the third zone is the most inland, also the farthest away from the water. It is present right beside the agricultural land, and this zone is characterized by grasslands or a mix of grasslands and wildflowers. The primary purpose of this zone is to slow down the nutrient runoff and trap sediment. When we talk about constructing a riparian buffer strip, there are many technical aspects that need to be considered, and it all depends on what the ecosystem needs. Some of those technical components include how wide the buffer strip is, the health of the body of water that the buffer is being built beside, soil conditions, and what is the land beside Zone 3 being used for, if it's agriculture, recreation, or something else. And all these technical components are very critical to think about when these buffer strips are being established.
So another type of natural solution are grasslands. Restoring and creating new grasslands can help improve habitat for many species, and this will also help to improve biodiversity. The grasslands are a major type of ecosystem that are made up of open areas with grasses as their predominant vegetation. There are many benefits to this type of ecosystem, so grasslands can mitigate the effects of climate change while also providing habitat for species at risk. They improve pollinator health and support biodiversity. As grassland habitats disappear due to land conversion for agriculture or other industrial uses, the species that rely on them for survival are being negatively affected by this habitat. Some grassland species in Ontario are listed as species at risk, with grassland bird populations in particular experiencing a sharp decline. One of these species at risk that is affected by the loss of grasslands in Ontario is the bobolink bird. So grasslands also help support biodiversity because this type of ecosystem provides habitat, shelter, food, nesting opportunities, migration stopover areas, and winter cover for many species. Creating and restoring this type of habitat will have many positive effects and overall will cause an improvement in biodiversity. So moving on to how grasslands are shaped. They were shaped by fires, drought, and grazing historically. Today, many grasslands are patches within urban and farm landscapes, and these areas are usually spread too far apart for seeds and animals to go between them. Management techniques can be used to improve the health of grasslands, and these include fires and prescribed burning, livestock grazing, mowing, and haying. And all these help to keep vegetation from growing too high and prevents trees from growing in these landscapes. Other management can include controlling invasive species, as well as interseeding and planting. Allowing animals to graze on grasslands provides a natural fertilizer as manure, and this helps with seed dispersal as well. The number of animals that are allowed to graze can be changed depending on how the environment responds to the grazing. So if plants are not growing back properly, grazing herd size can be reduced. Mowing and haying can also be used in grasslands where fire and grazing are not an option. When there are ground nesting birds present, mowing can be delayed until after the nestlings have fledged. Interseeding and planting native prairie plants can help to reintroduce the species that are historically found in grasslands and increase the size of the gene pool, as well as rejuvenate dying sites and help control the spread of non-native species. We can shape natural areas around us to form shelter and places for wildlife to live. Brush piles, which is shown on the left image, are made from piling woody plant material with loose brush and branches put on top. Natural features such as rocks and stumps can also be included when forming a brush pile. So these brush piles enhance and support wildlife cover and provide shelter for many songbirds, small mammals, reptiles, and amphibians when there is limited natural cover. They give shelter from cold winter and hot summer weather and provide protection from predators as well as provide nesting cover. Wildlife corridors, which are shown on the right image, are patches of habitat that connect areas together and can help create more connectivity between habitats. These corridors help plants disperse and animals move between habitats to reproduce, feed, and find shelter. And due to habitat fragmentation, wildlife corridors are essential for connecting habitats to wildlife. Trees are an important part of ecosystems that provide habitat for wildlife. Planting and conserving trees is important as they support the lives of many wildlife species. Trees are used for food, shelter, and sites for reproduction. Many animals also use trees for resting and nesting, for places to live and which to hunt from or capture prey. The leaves, buds, flowers, and woody parts of trees are used by many species, whether it be for food or to make nests. In addition to their benefits to wildlife, trees also provide other ecosystem services, including supplying oxygen and reducing carbon in the atmosphere, reducing air pollution, and helping to prevent erosion, as well as maintaining healthy soils. Snags, which is shown in the picture on this slide, are standing dead and dying trees that can occur as a result of disease, fire, lightning, animal damage, drought, and old age. Snags provide many benefits to ecosystems, and you should leave them up if it's safe to do so. As long as they're not going to fall in a building, they can provide many benefits. Snags are an important part of ecosystems that should be conserved, as they allow birds and small mammals to use them for nests, foraging, roosting, and perching. Hollow cavities in snags provide hiding spots and nesting sites for birds and small mammals, and insects within these trees provide a source of food for many species of wildlife. The higher branches on snags provide unobscured lookouts for birds of prey, as there's no leaves left on these.
So why do we want to restore habitats? Wildlife is critical to natural processes, and their habitats play a crucial part in the biological and ecological processes that are necessary for life, which includes the functioning of the biosphere and enhancement of human life, depending on the delicate interplay amongst these organisms. The ecological processes are key for agriculture, fisheries, forestries, and other industries as well. They help maintain the quality of the inhabited environment by removing pollutants and by preventing waste accumulation. Some biological processes in which species play a prominent role are pollination, germination, seed dispersal, soil generation, nutrient cycling, predation, waste breakdown, and pest controls. For example, birds can be important in controlling pests. At the ALUS site, we visited and we saw that basically squirrels were planting black walnut trees, and it was said that the squirrels did a better job at this than humans did. So yes, wildlife is definitely crucial in order to create a productive area. So thus, through nature-based solutions like creating wetlands, buffer strips, habitat spaces, through maintaining grasslands and planting trees, we can turn land that looks like this to become home to more wildlife and make it actually look something like this, where it's more productive due to the benefits that wildlife carries. So thank you so much for listening. And we just want to show you some pictures of a before and after at the ALUS site that we visited in Innerton. So these are some before pictures of the site. And then a bit afterwards, this site right here, the first image, had about 2 ponds created, or 2 wetlands kind of created, and these basically filtered water, so they behaved as natural filters that clean out the water, and the water flowed downstreams, and the rocks placed in the third picture right here were used as controls for water flow. Yeah, those are the pictures. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation once again.
Thank you, Rishika and Elyse. That was a really informative presentation that we had there, and a really great job of going over the different benefits that ALUS projects can provide, and the different projects that we work on as well. I'll just be a moment here getting up my presentation, and then we'll get started. My name is Peter Moddle, and I'm the Program Coordinator for ALUS Middlesex. In this presentation, I'll be going over the program overview for ALUS Middlesex and a little bit more of what it's like to be involved as a participant and the process of getting an ALUS project. First off, a little bit more about us. ALUS Middlesex is a nonprofit that was established in 2017. Operating in the County of Middlesex, we're here to help farmers plan, fund, and establish natural conservation projects on their farmland. These natural conservation projects can include things like tree plantings, riparian buffers, tallgrass prairie creations, and wetland excavations. We only work on marginal, unproductive, or environmentally sensitive farmland. What this means is that we don't want to take prime agricultural land out of production, but only work on areas of your farm that are no longer having a high yield, aren't productive, or provide real benefit to your farm and can have an alternative use as a natural conservation project. We have worked with 50 farmers in Middlesex County and enrolled over 300 acres to date. Now we'll just go through the program process from first getting in contact with ALUS Middlesex to having your project established on the ground. The first step is getting in contact, and that starts with an EOI, an expression of interest. This form is something you can send to our staff and fill out your personal information, so how we can get in contact with you, and then what you're looking for on your farm. This can be from very basic, I am looking to do something on my farm, to a more in-depth plan of you knowing exactly, I want to retire 1 acre corner in my field to a tree planting. Both work for us. The next thing is an on-farm site visit. So we'll schedule a site visit with you to come out to your farm and walk the land with you to see the different areas that you may be looking at to establish natural conservation projects. We'll learn about your goals and ideas for the land and more about your agricultural operation as well. We can provide technical guidance and recommendations to achieve your goals for a natural conservation project. During this time, we'll talk about all these things and develop a project plan that we can put together that is customized for your farm. We know that each farming operation is unique, so that we need to develop a customized plan suited to you and your goals. The next step is planning. After this initial site visit, we'll go back and develop a customized plan for your farm. This involves everything, from permits to contractors to where the seed's coming from and developing a project map. ALUS is a recognized leader in environmental restoration across Canada, and you can be sure that anything we are recommending is in line with industry best practices. We also have an extensive network of trusted suppliers to make sure you have native local seed for your trees or tallgrass prairie, and we work with contractors to carry out the work, and we know they're going to get it done right. Finally, farmer approved. Projects never go ahead without farmer approval. So we're always looking for your approval on the project before going ahead, and we'll work with you until we can find a design that fits your needs and the environment's needs. Next up is approval. So we're aware of all the current rules and regulations surrounding these projects. We work with conservation authorities, municipalities, and other governmental agencies to ensure that you have the correct permits to carry out the work on your land. After everything is approved by you and by any permits that are necessary, it goes towards our Partnership Advisor Committee, also known as a PAC. Our pack is made up of farmers from Middlesex County, local environmental staff, and academia, who vet each project to ensure it has environmental merit. This pack is representative of Middlesex County and makes sure we know what's going on in the area. After approval from the pack, ALUS staff will look for funding for your project to help cover the costs of establishment and annual payments. We work with a variety of funders, from local partners to different grants that we apply for. We always want to make sure that we can support you as much as we can in carrying out these projects. The final step is establishment. This is one of the most exciting phases of your project. This is when all the planning comes to fruition and your project goes in the ground. ALUS staff will work with you to schedule and coordinate any work that's being carried out on your property, and we'll be there to oversee that the project is completed to satisfaction. Another unique part about the ALUS program is that ALUS pays an annual payment for every acre that you enroll. So every project, every acre that you establish, can be enrolled into the ALUS program, and you'll receive an annual payment on that based on a 5-year contract. These payments can help you cover the costs of maintenance on these projects. Another key aspect to the ALUS program is that we're not going to leave you after we put this project on your farm. So we like to check in every year with you and come out to your farm to connect one-on-one to discuss with you your project. This includes any concerns, any questions, and any successes as well. We'd love to hear from you and learn about what's working, what's not working, do you need any help, and what do you like about your project as well. So for every year of that 5-year contract, we'll come out and meet with you one-on-one, as well as we are always available by phone or call to come out other times during the year or answer any questions if something comes up. I wanted to give a quick visual timeline of the ALUS process of establishment. So here on the left, we have a picture of a site taken in the winter months, and this is before any establishment has occurred. In the middle, we have the progress picture. So this is when the wetland's being excavated, and on the right we have what a project looks like after it is completed. On this particular project, a wetland was created and trees were planted in this small field that was no longer accessible to farm with larger equipment. So this project on this slide can really visualize the impact that it can have on the landscape. In conclusion, I just want to reiterate that we are here to help. Please get in contact with us. We would love to hear from you, hear about your farm, and anything that you'd like to complete on your farm. My email is there if you'd like to reach out to me. And please feel free to check us out on social media as well if you'd like to learn a little bit more. Thanks so much for listening.